And that's why representation has only been so superficial, you know, where it's just about the showing, but never really about the talking. Because when it comes to really talking and really inviting those people at the tables, which tables should be actually toppled over, like, suddenly they're not there. And if they're there, they are the tokens, you know, they just tokenize some people. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're revenant. Please consider subscribing if you like everything and anything about secondhand fashion, chaotic styling, and yapping. For today's video, we're going to yap. Yes, I know you like my yapping videos, and I'm back. I want to yap about the representation within the fashion industry, because a few days ago, I bumped into Day's latest issue, and this latest issue was about Tyla. I mean, the cover star was Tyla, this up-and-coming South African singer, and she was apparently like the mastermind behind the photo shoot, because it was part of an issue, of a series of like artists, you know, being more than what they just are in their craft, and kind of, you know, planning a whole shoot and being the creative director behind a whole shoot. And so as I was skimming through the issue, there was something I found very, very interesting, and it was the use of the black models. Tyla herself does not consider herself as black per se. She identifies as colored. She's South African, she has Indian descent as well, so makes sense that basically, since she's a mix, that she does not really want to fit into a box, and within the South African, you know, context, it makes sense. And so, like, in the shoots, there's those dark-skinned black men used as props. Little interjection, because I thought that I had mentioned that, but turns out that I did not mention that as I was filming. But basically, what was the most striking to me was how dark the models were made to be. Mind you, it's a photo shoot, so after every photo shoot, they are, you know, editing of pictures. So the fact that you can barely distinguish any features on those very dark-skinned men is a creative choice. They made sure that they were dark enough so you could barely really see their features, and that's something that is actually so kind of interesting to me, because those models are there without being there. Clearly, you know, Tyla is distinguishable among them because she's like way lighter than them. But I think it's just so interesting to see that those models were really used just as props, because you can barely distinguish their features. They're just there without being there, which I would love to know what was the whole creative direction behind it. I don't know, it's something that is actually so like weird to me, and it was just striking to me to see this, and it got me thinking about, you know, how South Sudanese models used to be like really big a few years ago, and then suddenly we have not really heard much of them. The latest we heard of them was because one model was told to have Eurocentric features, and it kind of created a whole storm, because nah, girlie does not have Eurocentric features. You just too racist to accept that black people can be beautiful. And also about the size inclusivity models, and, you know, the body positivity movement that kind of pushed for more of that inclusivity. Suddenly, like, plus size models were very not seen, if I can say it like that. I mean, they were seen, but not as much as they used to during the body positivity movement. And I feel like that now we kind of know 2-3 plus size models that we see everywhere, but then it's just about it. And if you look at latest reports on size and diversity in general, reports in fashion weeks, it's very, very damning to see how little representation were actually showed. And you know, thinking about all of that, it got me, you know, wanting to give my 2 cents into that, because, you know, I love to think about fashion critically. I like to also point out why we are seeing some phenomenon happening, because again, let's not forget that fashion is a hyper-capitalistic realm, and anything that is capitalistic and hyper-capitalistic in a sick society that is the roots of all the ism that exists, the moment you don't treat the system, in which all systems have to rely on and they have no other option than to rely on that system, well, nothing is really going to be working properly. For this first chapter, I want to talk about how representation is just a facade, because it's not really solving anything. It just, you know, a very United Colors of Benetton. If you remember that brand, I don't know if the brand is still around, but it very much reminds me of that when I see ads today, you know, with a lot of diversity, which, thank you for the diversity, but it's not just a facade. Like, the diversity and the change has to happen also within. And yeah, like when I see ads today, it's very much United Colors of Benetton. And I remember when this brand was around, that was one of the only few brands that had, you know, diversity, because also it was called United Colors of Benetton. But it did not, you know, hinder the fact that, you know, the fashion industry as a whole was not diverse at all. So that's why I'm saying that it's very United Colors of Benetton. It's just that it's giving you this idea that, oh yes, diversity, but in hindsight, there's not much change, because technically the goal is not really to just have a facade. Like, the reason why they get to give us just a facade is because we content ourselves with the facade. We're just happy if we get to see like very marketable, you know, ads where we feel represented, you know, like this idea that if I see now in big brands a black woman, now, you know, now they're representing me, I'm more inclined in consuming what they have to sell. And the thing is, it always comes to pushing you to consume. You know, the reason why all of a sudden we're starting to see more diversity is because there was a call for more diversity. Because when people looked into the fashion industry, they were like, it's very, very white. And there's actually a problem because it's not representative of the world today, of the society. And like, you know, anything that works within neoliberal capitalism, the moment they hear more and more people complaining about a problem, they give you a solution, but the solution is literally just, yeah, well, you know, we're just gonna give you this band-aid so you feel happy about that, and it kind of gives you the illusion that we're actually taking care of you. That's all we're gonna do. But the thing is, the band-aid is gonna come off at some point. And if the wound is actually not treated, what's the point of the band-aid, you know? And that's basically the whole thing with the fashion industry. The whole thing with the fashion industry is that it's an open wound where they like to put band-aids over band-aids. and never really treat the problem. But the thing is, again, if the problem wants to be treated, it needs to be addressed, which is the system is the problem. And as long as the system is not addressed, what's really the point? Two examples that I have in this whole, you know, like diversity and representation in ads is not really changing anything. I don't know if you heard of the racist atmosphere within Reformation. So yeah, like her name is Yael. Yeah, Yael Aflalo. I think that's how it's pronounced, like Yael Aflalo. She's the founder and CEO of Reformation, and I think it was during the 2020 BLM, you know, protest where like George Floyd was killed, rest in peace, and it ignited like protests nationwide in the United States, but also worldwide. Because I remember we also had like protests here in Europe. It was quite big, and a lot of brands at that time were showing their support for the movement, and you know, like doubling down on the fact that Black Lives Matter and Black lives should be respected, and racism should stop, and all that. And so Reformation did that, and a former employee of Reformation literally spoke up because she just felt that Reformation doing, like, having this stance on Black lives and Black people was just very much hypocritical of the brand and the CEO, because turns out that behind the scene, Black employees were enduring like racism. It was just not good, and because of that it sparked quite some outrage, rightfully so. Reformation has always been very inclusive in its ads and all that jazz, but to kind of then learn that behind the scene it's not that was kind of jarring, and because of that it created a lot of backlash, and the CEO stepped down. When I thought of it, I was like, okay, she stepped down. She said that she was very sorry about, you know, the whole situation and for her behavior, that she's ashamed of herself for that, and she kind of realized that basically she was seeing inclusivity and diversity through a white gaze, and that's where the problem lied, is the fact that it was still very much, you know, problematic the way she was viewing diversity and inclusion, and not necessarily in a very deconstructing way. And you know, okay, great, but like as of now, because I couldn't really find any information, like, is the situation better? Like, is there something that was put in place afterwards for like not only Black employees but employees of color in general? Because, you know, like I always say that it's really nice to be like, oh yeah, I'm anti-racist, and we try not to be too, you know, discriminatory towards people. But if you bring people of color within, you know, an environment that is still inherently racist, because the only way people are trying to combat racism is by being colorblind and being like, oh, you know, yeah, you know, I have Black friends, or I don't see color, or whatever. It's not changing anything. The last situation that I have in mind is the Jacquemus team picture. I don't remember which runaway there was, but after a runaway, Jacquemus, Simon Porte Jacquemus, I'm gonna say it the French way, I speak French, so Jacquemus, posted a picture on his Instagram with his entire team. I think it was in 2021. It was probably, yeah, 2021. because I remember the picture, like everyone is wearing a mask. And he posted that team with a heart emoji. And basically you can see that the team is like, they're all white, you know, so the people who work in the HQ of Jacquemus are all white. And so it sparked some, you know, not really a controversy, but like a discourse on how basically brands like Jacquemus, who uses a lot of models of color and have them a lot, you know, on the runway and the ads and stuff like that, how basically then behind the scene they are very much just among white people, you know, how then black and brown bodies are just used as props, you know, so it gives this illusion that it's very diverse, but then they're not invited within the discussions to really make sure that fashion is really inclusive and fashion is really respectful and representing black and brown bodies in a good way that is not within just the white gaze. And yeah, it's kind of started a whole discourse where a lot of people were saying about how it's not new to see that those brands who used a lot of black and brown bodies on their runway, behind the scene, they don't even have any diversity, and how diversity is something that they only see as a trend for them and as a marketing ploy, just to, you know, have people talk about them and for them to sell, because of course people are going to be more inclined to participate in a business that seem to be inclusive and, you know, diverse, rather than one that is not, especially in this day and age where people want more of that because they want, you know, the society that they live in being represented in the product that they buy. And the fact that it's just a whole facade and kind of a mirage, and it's not really for the good reason that we're seeing a lot of this representation, because the like diverse bodies still are not invited in the tables, even though I strongly believe, like the tweet says, that some people want to sit at the tables that they were actually that God sent them to topple over. Like sometimes you don't need to sit at the table, because that the table is not going to try to really compromise with you. So sometimes you just need to, you know, topple over the table and, you know, like build a new one that is a fairer one, you know. Like I talked about the white gaze and how the whole like Reformation CEO was admitting as well about how the way she was viewing diversity and inclusion was very much on the white gaze, and it was the white gaze. What is the white gaze? The white gaze is something.
Second interjection, because I'm realizing that the way I was explaining what the white gaze is was a bit too complicated when I could actually simplify it quite easily. So here is me simplifying for you what is the white gaze. So the white gaze is a term that was coined by late African-American writer Toni Morrison, where she explained that the only way the black African-American body was existing within the white American society was through the white gaze. So basically, like, everything that was actually perceived about the black body was always through a white lens, and kind of in a way to comfort the white body on the way they view black bodies.
So that's the white gaze. And the thing is, the white gaze, because, you know, I call it the colonial gaze as well, is that it's very like colonial. Like, it's just this idea of you know, like the way we're going to give, okay, we're going to try to view people that are non-white as equal to us. So like they then kind of put their own definition of, you know, what is representation and inclusivity, which for them is just showing it, not really doing the work inwards. It's really just like showing a facade, showing like for it to be visible. Look, we have plenty of ads where you can see people of different ethnic backgrounds, and that's about it. That's also the same way when during the body positivity movement, it was, you know, huge with, you know, having more plus size models, and suddenly, you know, like it kind of dwindled down and we're not seeing much of plus size models anymore. And I feel like that the ones that we know, there's now kind of three that are major, like Ashley Graham, Paloma Elsesser, and Tess Holiday. For example, it was actually stated that during the New York Fashion Week 2022, like, was it the spring-summer? Yeah, spring-summer 2022. Even though it is reported that 67% of American women are, you know, in the plus size category, only 5% of plus size women were actually walking the runway. And the autumn winter 2024 was the worst in terms of size inclusivity, where literally I think like they did like a whole, I think that is Vogue Business, they did like a whole study where they grouped like all the fashion weeks around the world, and only 0.8% was plus size, and the rest, then there was a little bit of mid-size, and I don't even know what mid-size is, and then the majority, like more than 90%, was what they call straight size. And that is something that is kind of insane, especially when you know that, you know, that's like the 67% that I gave is for the United States, but worldwide, there are more women who are in the plus size category than they are in the straight size, you know? And it's something that is actually quite insane, because also when you look at the, you know, criteria to be a plus size, I've seen women who literally are not, you know, fat at all, but they're just not super flat, and they are considered plus size. When I say the white gaze, I also mean that the fact that people with very normal bodies are seen as plus size, like the fact that majority of the women around the world are seen as plus size for just having normal bodies. Fat phobia has a colonial tint to it. Something that is also very interesting with the white gaze is how the white gaze can actually really like respond to trends, you know, because again, the like body positivity movement, when a lot of people were talking about that in the mid-2010s, suddenly we saw a surge of like more diverse bodies, and then the Black Lives Matter like movement as well, and people, you know, complaining about the lack of, you know, ethnic diversity, and then suddenly we're starting seeing more and more of ethnic backgrounds showing, and then also a mix of the two. And even in diverse, I really want to put it into quotes, because I feel like that what we are seeing a lot more is a lot of like black models, like more black models. But for example, I feel like that I have to look for the East Asian, the South Asian, the Pacific Islanders, and all the other like ethnic groups that we don't really see much, you know. So even that, I'm always like how diverse it is if like the only diversity that I see is mostly people that look like me, you know. And that's when I feel like that it's very disingenuous, because it just looks like the because, you know, we raised the issue, suddenly they were like, okay, we're going to respond to that, and then decided to put more people in there. So they kind of did it in spite instead of really trying to change the whole thing and change the whole industry. It was more like, yes, let's just do that for the like to kind of calm the nerves, but not necessarily because they really wanted to do that. By that I mean that if like people were not raising the question and pointing the fingers, they would have not done anything. Like if people would have been like shut silent, they would have not really done anything, because they only respond to trends, you know, they only respond to, you know, like growing movement, because by doing so they know that they responding to a demand. And so it means that if they're responding to a demand, there's money to be made. I know guys, we back with, you know, the whole capitalism. That I'm sorry to always bring this up, but it's because literally I have no other issue to bring it up. Like I have to bring up the system that we live under. You know, I'm not gonna invent a whole other system when the system we live under is the reason why we have issues. You know, and so just to kind of show you the links with everything. And so because of that, you know, we kind of now come to a point where like the diversity that we see is, like I said in the previous chapter, for a marketing ploy. They just want money, you know, and so they're responding to a demand. And it's actually so problematic to view people's struggle as a trend. And it shows just how colonial the whole representation in the fashion industry has become. Because if people see Black lives as just a trend, you know, that they can hop on and off, when as a Black person, I cannot hop on and off my Black life. I'm stuck into that. That's literally my reality. It's just that there's this whole thing where like seeing social struggles as just a cash grab that you can make, you know, when basically in hindsight you don't really care about the really implication of that social movement. It's the whole, yeah, it's actually so kind of sad and sinister in a way. Like it's June, it's Pride Month, and I'm so happy that more and more people have actually realized that a lot of those corporations that, you know, change their logos with the rainbow during Pride Month, that they just pink washing the whole thing, that they never really cared. Like for them, it's again a trend. It's like during the whole month of June, they're going to have this new logo with the Pride flag, and when like 1st of July comes, they back into being like their normal logo, you know. So suddenly, like, yeah, suddenly LGBTIQ plus people are not that important. We don't need to market to them anymore, you know. And I feel like that this is the best way where you can see about how like corporation co-opts, you know, a social movement to make money. And it's not really giving anything and helping anything for the cause, but it's just milking money off of you, you know, because they then kind of realizing that you actually a target audience that could actually be nice for their market and make them a lot of money. And this goes for, you know, everything that we see in the fashion industry, is that every time they see a target audience, something gaining prominence, there's money to be made. And I'm talking about the fashion industry, but it's basically like any industry within this neoliberal capitalism. Instead of really helping and pushing for true change, they're just going to give us, you know, very lazy activism. Is it even activism? We should call it marketivism, because it's literally just marketing activism, where people are just marketing to a target audience to make them feel seen and to kind of give this illusion that we're here with you, we hear you, we see you, but they're not really helping anything. If anything, they're even strongly participating in the oppression of those people, because neoliberal capitalism can't survive and has no reason to be if oppressions are non-existent. Basically, this white gaze, like hopping from trend to trend so you can do some marketivism, has led to really kind of questionable behaviors. One questionable behaviors is that the white gaze, white colonial gaze, has actually brought up within the fashion industry when it, you know, comes to representation, is the rise of South Sudanese models. We all are aware of that. We all have seen how, like, was it close to the end of the 2010s when suddenly we're starting to see more and more South Sudanese model, you know, entering the fashion industry, which was kind of something huge, knowing that, you know, South Sudanese were very dark skinned, and like the darkest skin that we knew from the fashion industry up until that time was who? Naomi Campbell. And she's not even dark, like I think Naomi Campbell is even slightly lighter than I am, if not we're similar. But I feel like that's actually kind of the darkest that we knew until South Sudanese model came in the picture. And, you know, it was great. A lot more of, you know, especially dark skin model coming into the fashion realm. Especially if you are aware of what colorism is, dark skin black woman, and I feel like that dark skin woman in general, not necessarily in the black community, but I'm also thinking about, for example, the Indian South Asian community, are not very well portrayed and well seen, you know, because like our closeness to whiteness is so far that we are not seen as desirable. So it was kind of a huge thing to see really dark-skinned black women entering the fashion sphere. And here I'm talking about the woman, but like it was also the same for dark-skinned black men. But I feel like that because, you know, colorism plays, you know, differently on like female and male body. I'm gonna, you know, focus on the female body for now, for this, you know, example that I'm giving. And so it kind of, you know, opened the gate for more and more, you know, dark-skinned black women to come to the rise, and they were like pushed so much into the, you know, public eye. And it was to a point where it felt like that, you know, the fashion industry were pushing them so much, kind of in a way to be like, look how non-racist we are, look how progressive we are, when now we're including super dark-skinned women within the realm of the fashion industry, when, you know, still kind of playing in this game that, you know, because dark-skinned black women usually are not seen as attractive, and then suddenly they become supermodels, which a supermodel is literally like the epitome of beauty. It means that they are beautiful. And then now, you know, black women, like it is actually admitted in the collective consensus that, you know, black women, especially dark-skinned black women, like Sudanese women, beautiful women. And you know, like it came to a point where it was a little too much. I feel like that, you know, when you're doing too much, it's kind of killing the whole thing, and it kind of gives the vibe of you trying to compensate for something because you're not doing something right, or you were kind of a shady you know, person or industry or whatever. And because I'm just like, no, it's actually great that now they actually including dark-skinned black women, even though it took them so long, because it's not like if dark-skinned black women are actually new. We've been here since forever, but whatever. But it's just that it was like, why do you feel the need to always like bring that to the table? Like, actions speaks louder than words, you know? I feel like that it's something that is kind of, it might sound very cheesy and cliche to say that, but it's actually very real, because action do speak louder than words. And the fashion industry was having a lot of words and praise for those Sudanese models. And then later we kind of found out with their actions that it was not really great. I remember the story of that one Sudanese model who was scouted in a refugee camp, because yes, that's a sketchy and weird behavior when like model agencies would send some, you know, model scouters to refugee camps in Africa, like in Kenya and other countries where South Sudanese were in refuge, and they would go to this camp and they would scout girls, and then they would actually send them to like Paris or Milan or wherever so they can work. And suddenly, you know, the girl would think that, you know, like new life for them, in, you know, it's a way for them to kind of get away from poverty and war and all those atrocities, for them to kind of end up in debt because suddenly they receive a bill where they have to pay for their stay, they have to pay for so many things that they were, you know, doing when they were in Europe, when those things were actually not really, you know, explicitly told to them. That's when I kind of realized that there was something so sinister with the push of Sudanese models to the forefront. Because if you know, like South Sudanese models to the forefront, and the thing is, if you know the like geopolitical history of South Sudan, it's a country that has been torn by war, backed by the West, by the way, just so you know. So a lot of Sudanese people are refugees. I feel like that what the fashion industry did with using the South Sudanese models was white saviourism. And again, we come back to the whole white colonial case, when for them, like putting those, you know, South Sudanese model and like having them now has those beacon of diversity was a way for the fashion industry to be like, look, and also on top of that, we are making their lives better because they are from family of refugees and they had to flee their country and like in a war-torn region in the world, and white saviorism is not a good thing. You know, white saviorism is really not a good thing, because it's this idea that the only way that the global majority can like survive and get away from their misery is thanks to white Westerners, which is a whole like manufactured ploy to justify the West still pillaging and destroying those countries for their own gain. So yeah, so basically there was this whole kind of thing where they were pitching those Sudanese models so much, and to the point that they became so famous and popular, you know, in the fashion realm, that opportunists decided that it was actually great to jump onto the bandwagon and to also create like social media platform for CGI, so AI models. So a British photographer named Cameron James Wilson decided to create Shudugram. So Shudugram was, I mean, is this model. She's a very dark-skinned model, and she has like a following of over 200k on Instagram. And when she came about, people were just amazed at how dark she was, how beautiful she was, because she has like very thin features and like a really dark tone, and just beautiful. And the pictures were actually beautiful. And then Harper's Bazaar released an article revealing that this model is actually not real. She is computer generated, and it created a whole frenzy because it was at a time where real dark-skinned models were out there, and a white British man decided to create a CGI. He even said himself that there's a kind of big movement with dark-skinned models, and so he created Shudu as a way to represent them and to show that he was inspired by them. And it was just so crazy because people were just like, why do you need to create a computer generated model? You're just seeing this whole thing as a trend is insulting. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's very insulting to just see that this white man saw dark-skinned black woman as just trendy props. And another thing that I also want to talk about is in the kind of, you know, weird behavior is the fact that the reason why we were seeing majority only South Sudanese women, they all kind of fit into this Eurocentric standard of beauty, you know, because they're all very tall, they're all skinny. I mean, the ones that were actually, of course, shown in the fashion realm, because, you know, like Sudanese people and women especially, like every woman in the world, they're all diverse as well. But the ones, you know, that were actually pushed within the fashion industry were all like tall, skinny, super dark skin as well. And like something that a lot of people, and something that I also paid attention to, is the features. And there's something called featureism. Featureism is the discrimination that you can face on your features, and particularly your face features. And like the closest your features are to whiteness, the more beautiful you are seen. And like featureism is also very problematic, like any ism, because it kind of stipulates that the only way that non-white bodies can be seen as beautiful is if they actually have something that is seen within the within whiteness as beautiful. And something that a lot of people have actually pointed out with South Sudanese is the fact that a lot of them have really small noses. Like small noses is something that is seen as, you know, inherently beautiful, and also for some reason linked to whiteness. Like, it's again a very colonial way to perceive beauty, because those Sudanese women don't have Eurocentric features, they have African features, because they just happen to have like smaller features, but those women are African. And like, it's not just typical to them to have those. Like, if you look West, East Africa, it's quite popular. Even a bit Central Africa, it's quite popular to have also small noses. It's like Africa is literally one of the most diverse continents in the world, literally. So this idea of calling those models, South Sudanese models, Eurocentric, as the only way to justify why they are being seen as beautiful and being, you know, invited within the fashion realm is racist. It also explains why they were the ones being pushed, because in a way they still fit a standard that the fashion industry wants. So again, it kind of begs the question about representation. Do they really want representation, or do they only want a type of representation that still fits the colonial racist ideology, but with just a different font, so they can be happy and proud about themselves? The problem is actually at the core. It's within the fashion industry, not on the outside, you know? So it's time that people really make changing within, but instead of being invited at tables that already exist and just sitting down around, it's just to like move the table, literally just move the table and really shake up the whole system. Okay people, so that's the end of this video. Like usual, please let me know in the comments what you thought of it, because I love to have like people's opinion on like different matters, and especially this one. I would be really willing to read what you have to say about representation, tokenization, and the white gaze in general. So leave your comments below, share the video around. You know, the more people question the type of representation we want, the better. And if you like this video, liked it, it helps me a lot. And you know what, in the meantime, I'll see you in my next video. Love always.